This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now.
I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent.
When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bonds, and I'm lucky today to be joined by Maria, COO of Insurtech Gateway. Maria, thank you for bearing with me. There's been loads of technical problems on the podcast, which it's usually the guest, but for once it was me and everything fell apart. So thank you for your patience and thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you, Alex. It's great to be here on the podcast.
Well, look, let's start as we usually do. It'd be great if you could introduce yourself, and I'm sure almost everyone listening knows who Insurtech Gateway are, but if you can give us who are Insurtech Gateway as well, that'd be great.
Absolutely, of course. Yes, my name is Maria. I'm COO at Insurtech Gateway. We are the specialist Insurtech incubator and fund, and our main goal is to fast track Insurtechs into market. We were set up in 2017, and our main hubs are in London and Sydney, but we invest globally, and we now have over 40 portfolio companies and work with over 100 insurance partners.
I've been wanting to do this for a long time, so thank you for coming on. We cross paths at all events and all sorts of things, so it's really nice to have you on. Insurtech Gateway, I think is a unique proposition, but I think sometimes it's kind of missed in this slew of incubators and VCs, and it's always a kind of like what specifically do you think makes Insurtech Gateway unique?
Yeah, great question, Alex. I mean, I think from my perspective, it's our in-house insurance expertise and our platform that are really unique. Many of the founders that we back and work with actually come from non-insurance backgrounds and have the main expertise in a specific field. So, for example, type 2 diabetes. So our role is really to bring that deep insurance expertise to that startup and the founding team. Our platform is also, I think, quite unique in its offering, and we've got 4 core pillars. One is around unlocking distribution, which is often one of the main challenges for early stage insurtechs. It's also centered around providing access to insurance and reinsurance capacity. And finally, the regulation capability and our ability to lead on investments.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of magic circle, because I'm always a bit intrigued by that in that I think when I didn't work with venture previously, because I was working with much more traditional insurance businesses, venture wasn't something that we ever kind of strayed into. It's like how much additional work gets done outside of the investment or the incubation. I'm just kind of like on that. Where's been the kind of demands from the businesses that you've seen coming in, like over the period of time you've been there? Like, where's been the most kind of pressure in terms of what they need from you? I know it's different from different businesses, but has that changed thematically over the time that you've been there? Like, was it more about distribution before and now it's not? Or it'd be good to understand that.
Absolutely. I think on the MGA side, the biggest hurdle to overcome tends to be finding the right insurance and reinsurance partners for pilot. In particular, if we're talking about brand new products, which would require a lot of work on pricing, product structuring, regulatory considerations, we're very lucky that we work closely with insurance partners that value innovation and are able to think creatively about launching these products, and most importantly, have a yes attitude to this rather than finding 1,000 reasons of saying no. But on the MGA side, yes, unlocking that first capacity is often the biggest challenge. On the SaaS businesses, I think one of the core hurdles to overcome is around finding that initial pilot customer. It's just, especially if you've got a product which is targeted at the insurance industry, I think it's really important to stay away from developing in a vacuum. And so trying to find that initial customer who you can really test out your MVP with and able to demonstrate the uniqueness of your solution is definitely one of the key aspects to solve.
What's the makeup of the teams change? Because that's something we've definitely observed on our side. Like, there's very different teams coming to the table with insurtech ideas now. I think in a lazy theme, I would say, is that we had much more kind of external non-insurance folk coming in, and there's a healthy trend of that, but there's kind of more insurance people, quote unquote, coming in with the new ideas and bringing to the table. But I know that's a really simplistic version of it, but what have you seen in terms of kind of the different teams that come with new ideas to work with Insurtech Gateway these days?
Yes, I think in terms of our deal flow, we're definitely seeing a really big breadth of founders. So both that have really deep insurance expertise, especially if they're building a solution that addresses the insurance industry, but also founders, they're coming outside of an industry, like you said. So for example, one of the portfolio companies, they have launched the first carbon credit insurance solution, and they've got really deep domain expertise in the carbon credit. Or another example is, building the first offshore risk model. And so again, there is so much domain expertise in the offshore risk domain space. So I think it's, from our perspective, we're always keeping a very open door to founders from different backgrounds. And I think that actually is what brings a lot of value, right, and drives the innovation is, of course, the deep expertise, but also ability to think about outside of the box. And it's normally the teams that have complementary skill sets across those areas that do the best.
I was reading this thing the other day, and I just wanted to get your opinion. It just came up when I was thinking about it. Do you believe like innovation is something that can be taught, or do you think it's a kind of form of creativity? It's something that people are kind of like essentially like creative or they're not? Because I saw something the other day that was saying innovation could be taught, and we were debating it internally, and I kind of wanted to get your view on it, because you work in this sort of incubation, early stage business. Yeah, is it a taught thing, or is it maybe a nature thing? I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think a lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with, they tend to just really kind of have this mindset from quite early on in their lives. They're just there and they want to bring new ideas to market. They're just, it's really what drives them internally. And I think that is actually one of the core areas to success when you're building an early stage business. Founders are one of the most resilient groups of people out there. There's so many ups and downs on the journey, but I think it's it's that ability to drive innovation, but also that ability to kind of communicate that in a lot of the ways to industries which have been kind of in status quo for a while. Yeah, to your question around kind of can you teach innovation? I mean, I think yes, to an extent, but where you see the biggest difference is where people are really driven by it from kind of an early point in their lives.
It reminds me of the kind of acting principle. And I swear people get annoyed about me mentioning the fact I used to be an actor on here, but I think there's so much relevance here. If you've ever done even if you've done acting at school, they talk about improvisation, and you always have to say yes and I always think that's what you can teach in innovation, is to say, a bit like, starting from first principles of saying, why don't we accept this as an idea that we could do? Why don't we accept this as something that could work, rather than going, no? It's like, right, okay, let's explore how it could, and then find out if it can. And it's that kind of improv idea of saying yes and. So, and I do think thematically some businesses are better at it than others, but I do think it's culturally something you can build in. But I just think that the key people driving that probably don't need to be taught that. They just have that in their bones. So, sorry, I was threw you a curveball there, but I was just like, it was something we were debating. I thought you'd have a good lens on it. It's the two sides of the Insurtech Gateway position, really, which is incubation and the investment arm. Just kind of really sort of wanted to understand the thinking behind that structure and really how they interact with each other. Like, can they operate independently? You can sit in the incubator, but you don't get investment, and vice versa.
Incubator invests at pre-seed stage, and we work really closely with the founders to help them get to market. But as you say, Alex, we also have a dedicated fund which invests at seed and Series A stage. And we're now actively deploying out of our second fund. The fund backs startups that have been through the incubator, but it also supports startups that we meet at seed stage. So you don't have to go through our incubator to be able to receive funding. The whole kind of underlying idea behind having both an incubator and an investment arm is we really wanted to create a space for founders where they can access everything in one place and to be able to support them on that journey from pre-seed to scale-up stage, because the challenges evolve and there's different hurdles at different stages, but we're there to provide insurance expertise along the way.
One thing I asked you before, we talked about this previously, but I think it's important, and I think looking at your role, your COO within the structure of an incubation investment business, what does that mean? Because I think everyone knows what a COO does in different environments, but I think it's a really unique business in which to have that COO role, and it certainly doesn't mean you just look internally at Insurtech Gateway. So yeah, it'd be good to understand and for people to hear what that means in the context of the Insurtech Gateway business.
Yes, I'm very lucky with my role, definitely. And I think it's quite unique because we do have both the incubator and the fund. So as part of my role, I work really closely with founders as soon as we invest at pre-seed stage. So effectively leveraging our platform. As an example, so providing that guidance on the regulatory side as to how we can delegate our FCA permissions for the startup to become authorized as an MGA in a matter of weeks, right? Rather than them securing their independent FCA authorization, which typically takes 9 to 12 months. So that's an example of kind of a piece of work that I get involved with. And then once the company progresses post the pre-seed stage, I stay very involved, providing that ongoing support, making sure, they're aware of core milestones and metrics they should be thinking ahead for their next phase. I also look after our internal operations and the fund management piece, including the fundraising, of course.
Does that mean that you offer so much at Insurtech Gateway? Difficult question if you answer, but does that mean that Insurtechs are kind of more willing to give up greater equity because of how much you add? Is that part of the conversation when you're competing against perhaps alternative kind of incubators or alternative investment?
Yeah, so I think founders really value having a place where they can focus on their core USP and what they're best at. I would say, like, in general, that would be my advice to any founders looking to partner with early stage investors, is really try and figure out where you need most support. And you want to leverage that as much as possible from your investors and your broader partners, and be in a place that enables you to focus on what you do best. And I think that's the core offering that the founders value on our side is, they're able to focus on their domain expertise, and we're able to support them on the insurance expertise side up until the point that, they need to bring that expertise in-house.
That's making me think about my business, the amount of time I spend not doing recruiting, which is too much. I think that's what I've always been drawn to about Insurtech Gateway is that, one, it's that kind of unique domain expertise in connections to the market. That sort of, it's like you can solve all of the insurance related questions for them. And where I think I sort of approach with caution sometimes, particularly when, let's say someone's taken investment from a more generalized fintech fund or more generalized fund. I sort of say, great, you've probably got the capital that you want. Have you got all the other things that you need? And the other things you need, probably the things that are going to slow you down more than anything. It's one thing to kind of get the equity slice that you want or get the deal that you want, but it's like, are you going to get the velocity? Because velocity in venture-backed businesses is as important as anything else. So it's always quite interesting for me. One thing you've got such a good lens on, so there's 40 portfolio companies now, and I'm sure there's many, but like as if we can kind of nail it down, like what are the key factors that you've think lead to success when building an early stage insurtech?
Yeah, I wish there was a simple answer to that.
Yeah, I want it in 3 bullet points, please, if we can.
Yeah, so let me maybe share some recurring things that have made a big difference to the companies that we have backed. At an early stage, the team is the most critical element for success, and I really can't emphasize that enough. It's important to have a co-founding team where you've got complementary skill sets, but more importantly, alignment on vision of where you want to take your business. And resilience definitely needs to be one of the core qualities among the team as well, given the journey. I think the other thing that's really important to think about is having that staged approach to testing your MVP. And really, it's being ready to evolve your product to make sure it properly fits the customer need. Ultimately, it's progress over perfection. So it's really about having that iteration process during the pilot stage where you're getting really valuable feedback from your customers. And I think finally, it's about finding the right partners that can accelerate your progress as a business. So be it an investor, be it an insurance or reinsurance partner or distribution partner, it's really thinking about what partners are able to see the long-term vision and are able to accelerate my journey there. So the businesses that we have seen succeed kind of definitely address all those 3 areas.
That kind of commonality of like vision, and I think is so. I mean, it sounds so obvious and trite, but it's really not. And I think sometimes I say things on this podcast, and I think if I was listening at home, I'd be like, well, obviously. But we see so many of these things. I mean, like, obviously, we're in a privileged position to work with a lot of kind of venture-backed businesses, and we do unfortunately see it where it doesn't go right. And it doesn't mean that the business is a fail, but we see it slow down its growth, or we see it kind of stagnate a bit, and it tends to be around that vision. And that's why we always talk about when you're going through like pilots, and how much feedback do you take from your potential customer and on board versus protect your own vision of going where the product needs to be. Because sometimes if you start building it for individual clients, we've seen particularly SaaS businesses that essentially become almost consulting businesses, almost like tech consultancy businesses, and then they build these products, and then they go so far from the vision that you kind of go, I don't even know if they know where they are anymore. And then that resilience piece, you and I, we are aware of some work that we've done lately in the portfolio, and it's no surprise to me that the person that is going to join is was an Olympic athlete, or was going, and I was like, yeah, that's the right kind of makeup. Because I think it is those people that kind of can run for a wall for you, because it does require so much energy. Although I don't know if you would agree with this, it looks like it requires a lot of energy, and it does. But for the right people, they're not expending the same amount of energy because they love this stage of the journey. Do you see that? Like, that's where they come alive.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to love this to be able to succeed, because ultimately different, people have different skill sets and what they enjoy. To be able to, have a successful founding journey, I think you have to enjoy the uncertainty of it all from the early stage. That it is definitely challenging, but for founders that see it through, there's big rewards at the end, right? You're building a legacy, so definitely something to look forward to.
I don't know what I'd do now. Like, I thought this the other day, like we literally moved offices this week, and we were all laughing. So we were moving so close. It's like there's no point getting like a moving van. So we literally walked all the stuff over, and we don't own. We're in a serviced office, so obviously we don't have any desks or chairs, but we've got one like stand-up desk which raises up and down. So we had to carry that over. And then we like rested it on a line bike, and we're carrying it over. And I was saying to my team, I said, this like makes me laugh, because I was like, this is for me what being a business is all about. This is the funny stuff. Like, this is like, you look back at this and laugh when hopefully we have got 50 people, and we don't need to do that. But I want to go through that journey. And I was saying to my team, it's all really glamorous, isn't it? Particularly when it started to rain, by the way. But there's just something funny about that. And you either enjoy that, or it's probably the wrong journey for you, which I find fascinating. I just wanted to get on like the funding landscape. Obviously you've been at Insurtech Gateway for a long time. the dynamic of insurtech funding has changed. How has that impacted like the guidance that you've put to your portfolio company?
It's definitely been a couple of challenging years in the fundraising market. Having said that, we definitely have still seen strong companies raise successful funding rounds. Of course, the focus has shifted a lot from growth at any cost to profitability. And as part of that, where we've seen founders succeed is when they're in control of when they go out to fundraise. And where that's been a success is where we see founders have very disciplined approach to setting milestones that they're looking to achieve ahead of the next funding round, and then going out to market as soon as you reach those milestones. That way, you're in control of the narrative, you're in control of the story, and it's not the runway dictating when you go out to market. On that, I would say it's very important to be clear about the milestones and traction that you're looking to achieve. And so, as an example, one of the important metrics that we ask our founders to monitor is around the burn multiple, which is effectively how much is the startup burning in order to generate each incremental dollar of ARR. And the reason why it's so important to look at this is that you've got an eye on one of those core indicators that enables you to make decisions early on, even if they're difficult decisions, right? But that just means you've got kind of a clear view of how your business is performing.
And that's not a metric we talked about enough, I think, a few years before, certainly. I mean, it's just such a different world. I mean, obviously being on the recruiting side of the business and the amount of times that I just remember really crazy times where we were having 5, 6, 7 remits given to us by one company that hadn't particularly raised a huge amount of money, and then just going, look, we just need to hire these people quickly. And the interview process was just so swift, and they would just move through, as opposed to, I'd say a year ago, there was almost like decision paralysis. People sort of were so scared to spend money that actually we had a 4-stage process agreed, and then we'd have a 5th stage and a 6th stage and a 7th stage, and there was nothing happening. And I think now there appears to be a more considered, balanced process. Everyone agrees the process, and you need to spend that money wisely. Which is why, interestingly, I think what we do is always a bellwether of the economy or a bellwether of the investment market, which is we are busy. And we're busy with different clients, but they're making much more strategic decisions on hiring. It's like, right, we're going to do all of this hiring ourselves. This is an important hire. Let's give Alex and FinPro a call for this specific role. Other recruitment companies are available, but they don't have their own podcast. So there's a slightly different tone in that conversation. It's like an acceptance that this is important enough to spend the money on. And it's just a really interesting reflection of where the market is. I wanted to talk about the future. So, has there been a sort of trend in like deal flow activity or themes in InsurTech Gateway's kind of thesis? What are the things that you're excited about from a kind of investment or incubation situation at the moment?
Yeah, of course. So we continue to see very strong deal flow, and we see around 600 opportunities a year, which we review in detail. And I think, of course, startups using AI to disrupt infrastructure and operational processes has been an emerging trend. And that is both kind of a function of what we look for as well as the inbound that we receive. And of course, insurance is a very data-intensive industry. So there's a lot of value add that can be achieved using the large language models across the entire value chain. We're working on one of the deals at the moment, exactly in this space, and I think there's definitely a lot of innovation to come still. I think in terms of themes, we would love to help the next generation of InsurTech founders who are looking to address protection gaps. There's still a lot of core areas where the protection gaps exist, but of course, one of the core ones are around climate and natural catastrophes, digital economies, and new economies emerging, and also health and longevity. So those are some of the core themes that we've been actively looking at and have already backed a number of startups in this space. But I think there's still a lot of work to do.
You can't invest in too many of those people that are doing good work. And I always end up finding myself being much more flexible on my fees when it comes to people that are doing things I really believe. So, and, yeah, I mean, we were talking about there's some brilliant businesses out there that are really using like insurance in an innovative way to sort of close that protection gap, or address things like climate change, address things like fertility, and like I think that's so exciting, and that's the thing that we've probably not done enough shouting from the rooftops about where insurance comes into play. Although I did find myself on the way home in an Uber having a relatively late night conversation about self-driving cars and insurance's part to play in whether that was going to happen or not. And so I was trying to do my bit the other day, but the sort of enablement of the insurance industry to kind of like drive change and for societal change is there. And, that's really exciting for me. Maria, thank you so much for doing this. I've wanted to have you on the podcast for ages. I'm sure if you're getting 600 submissions a year, everyone knows how to get in touch with Insurtech Gateway. But just in case there's any entrepreneurs in waiting or people that kind of have got those pitch decks that they kind of just desperate to send to someone, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, of course. No, we're always very keen to meet early stage founders, but even just broader insurance partners, looking to kind of drive innovation. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or go directly to our website, and there is a pitch button on there.
Amazing. Maria, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you, Alex.